this is the way forward. So, as always, I will share my screen and, the opportunity for questions, that type of thing, for sure. But before I do that, just, and you can pop this in the chat or you may have questions. Most of us, like I said at the beginning, as I was just pressing the record button, are prompting. And my question, I suppose, for you to just ask you if you're open to that, is how are you currently prompting at the moment? Have you got certain frameworks you're using, or are you just prompting? Is it testing and trying to prompt? Is that where you are at the moment? Or have you started applying some frameworks? Where are you on that space? Anyone, it doesn't really matter, or you can pop in the chat. Be great to see, engage where people are in terms of prompting. Do we have anyone who wants to share just briefly? Just say where they are with it.
I
Helen?
can do if no one else
Yeah,
wants to go.
beautiful. Thanks, Helen.
So I am unfortunately using it more like Google than I probably should. I'm asking it to create documents for me, um, and search the internet and gather information for me. I have, however, in the past, I've used it, given it a video I've created myself and asked it to do certain things with it. So to firstly give it a brief five sentence outline or overview, and
Hmm.
then a section to gather the the, the most important bullet points from it, and do various things and gather the vocabulary and certain things like that, so that
Okay.
it's more people can have the document as well as the video.
Hmm. Hmm. So you're kind of, as you're going through it, you're just asking it kind of conversationally, do this, create this type of thing, and there's a video element component if that's something you're able to
Well,
create.
it's kind of like a single prompt that says, take this video, then do this with it, then do that with it, then do the other with it.
Ah,
And then
okay.
it spits it all out at the end.
Okay.
So I have one document to just cut and paste rather than asking it one question and then cut and paste that answer, asking it the next question, then cutting and paste that one. So it's all in one,
Mhm.
um, which it takes it some time to do, but that's fine. I can go away and leave it and come back to it.
And it comes back. That's a great way of using it because what you're doing is you're unpicking certain components of what you want it to do. But even within that, we can go a bit deeper. So I really like that you've already started thinking in that way. Okay, I want this to do these steps, the output. So we'll go into that a little bit more. Thank you, Beth. So Beth just said, no frame was just tempting, giving the most factual context as I can. So hopefully we've got brilliant. Did you want to add to that, Beth?
I would say while I haven't used it for video editing or creation like Helen has, I'm still just asking it to amalgamate sources. And I am often asking it for advice or, hey, can you generate some facilitation questions or, match this content to this set of objectives, etc. I haven't loved other coaching partners who've used it for, say, PowerPoint. I just don't like the decks that come back. I find that they're really awkward looking. So that could be an area, right, to learn how to refine that. But I'm sure there are like 300 things that could up level just my basic,
Yeah.
what I'm actually using it for at this point and how to, prompt to get good information that and then becomes part of my creative process and says, oh, wow, now we could do this and then we could build this way. And I'm just not there yet. I feel very novice.
Yeah, and some what tends to happen is we keep going back to primary level, starting again, and going back to kind of base camp, as I say, right, in this space. So great, Liza. We've got hi, Liza, Ivan. Good to see you on, as always. Okay, and as you know, some of you, I absolutely love using Notebook LM. I have got slides too, and so one of the things I do use it for. I'm going to start with a little intro from Notebook
Hey
LM.
everyone, and a special hello to all of you tuning in from the Biweekly AI group. Great to have you with us this Wednesday, June 11th, 2025.
Great to be here.
So today we're exploring a topic that honestly is just exploding, prompt engineering.
Right.
And you might think, okay, I use chatbots, I type stuff in, but the sources you sent over, they paint a much bigger picture.
I really do.
They argue it's not just a text field anymore. It's basically becoming the way we humans talk to and, well, direct AI.
That's a perfect way to put it. And think of this session as us pulling out the absolute key takeaways from your materials, specifically for you.
Okay.
The sources show this whole evolution, from just giving simple instructions all the way up to building these like complex thinking systems that work alongside you.
All right, let's get into that journey then.
Is this too hard?
Cindy?
Okay, so is that Liza? What did you say? Sorry, I missed that, Liza.
Sorry. No, sorry, I accidentally hit mute. I was speaking to my cat, Bally.
That's okay. That's okay. I can share that recording with you. I thought you had a question about that, but yeah. So we're going to be talking through these slides, and I will share that. So what I did was in that example, kind of where I am in this space. And I like trying different tools. For those of you who already have met me, I'm always trying various tools and seeing how I can synthesize, how I can use some of my research. And what I did, in fact, was I put what we're going to be talking through today. I used some of the materials and then I synthesized that. I uploaded it on Notebook LM. By uploading it on Notebook LM, I then customized it. There are steps in this, and I can definitely go through that another time. But then I customized it to kind of giving it a bit of an opening where we are. So now I'm going to dive in, and I can share that recording with you. So that was done through Notebook LM. Notebook LM, by the way, is free and great for creating materials. Helen, this might be of help to you. Creating brief documents for those of you, and also mind mapping. So happy to kind of show that depending on time we have at the end. But just kind of pivoting over, this is kind of what I was getting it to do, is thinking about prompting paradox from simple commands to cognitive collaboration. Some of the things that I'm noticing at the moment is days have gone where we were just giving simple commands. That's kind of a bit dated in a way. And what we can be thinking more strategically is Helen started to think about creating videos, that type of thing, and really getting it to become our own cognitive collaborator, if you like, a partner. So just a little bit on me, sort of every 2 weeks, what I do is I'm part of an AI community. I go away, learn, I'm reading, I really go into this. I start looking at what's working, test things out, but I also then want everyone else to share their experiences. By no means is what I'm doing exhaustive. It's kind of where we are in this space, and things are evolving very, very quickly. I'm already talking about how things were simple about a year ago and how far we've come in that short period. So it is about kind of this evolving journey as we're going through this together. And that's what I've started doing since last year of August. I've just sort of meet every other week, get together, what I'm learning with another coach, or I'm part of a mastermind, and we've started really going deeper into this. And in fact, I will cite him today, something that I've learned through that journey. So I will happy to kind of come and share that and share with you, and hopefully we can share together and learn. And that's kind of my intention with these sessions. And if you want to obviously go deeper into this, or you want to create your own AI system, we can obviously have that conversation away from these kind of standalone sessions. So today we're kind of looking at that shift where how we're interacting AI with AI systems. And just as we began, just kind of before I clicked the record button, David was asking, are we looking at ChatGPT? Well, actually, what we're going to be discussing can be applied in different models, depending on what LLM, large language model, you're utilizing, and we often have a preference. Some of us prefer ChatGPT still, some of us Claude or Bar or whatever that model might be. Some of us do have we just kind of go there. It becomes like the place to go. I always find, what we get used to, we stay there. And that's why having these conversations, because it becomes kind of this thing we do, and it becomes easy thing, but we want to like test these models out too. So let's try and go beyond simple prompting and designing kind of collaborators, using these powerful tools. So what tends to happen is now what we're seeing is, if you've had that experience where you're sitting there and you become really frustrated with prompting, you're creating a report, and it's professional report, and you're just kind of really frustrated with it kind of not giving you what you want. You think this AI thing will just, churn out what the thing you want, right? The output. Well, it doesn't do that. And then there are reasons for that, because the kind of latency of what that comes out with, because if you give it initial instructions, then you deviate, and then it almost dilutes the message. So we really want to, and there are things that we can talk about today will help kind of, just, keep it in check. It is up to, it's still going to need that human oversight to kind of look through that. So we often end up spending and wasting time while reformulating prompts. Maybe you've got some prompts that really work. Helen used that example. She's got like a cheat sheet she uses, applies that. It's become the thing to go to, and it just saves time. So what we want to do actually is to save time and have prompts that serve us and to a level that really support us, as opposed to kind of just always starting from prime, the beginnings again, like starting from like having a, where do I start again? Oh, I'm going back to that again. Like we don't, I mean, you wouldn't have Ford Card doing that, right? So why would we do that? So we want to start and evolve and utilize the prompts that are working, and look at kind of how these models are also changing. And also we want kind of, and also what we're finding is inconsistency. And so we experienced that, the other day I had this output, now it's giving me this output. I don't know what's going on, right? So those type of conversations may be happening. And if that's the case, we're thinking about like, what is it that was working before? What behavior or memory is it leaning on now? You can also even ask how you're showing up your own philosophy through asking your GPT model. But we want to work with the model as opposed to kind of thinking it's gonna, it's going to create something. What I'm noticing also, people will say, oh, just get GPT to, just get GPT to do it. It'll do all of it. Well, it just doesn't do it. You do have to kind of give it some instructions, and you have to kind of tell it what you want it to do. It just doesn't turn things out. People are going, oh, this is also very easy now. Well, if that was the case, we wouldn't have these positions now. Prompt engineering is being a well sought after profession now. We're seeing, that's because of the art and what's needed and the skill, becoming really good at prompting. And, once you craft this skill for your own businesses or wherever you are, it becomes such a skill that it will save you time. And then once you can, have these prompts, it is then taking it to the next level where we're thinking of automating. But if we think about the prompting paradox, it's like, yeah, the trap. Okay, focusing solely on finding perfect words leads nowhere. So we kind of get caught in this trap of like, we've got to have the semantics perfect to be able to get the outputs. Well, that's not the case, because treat it like a conversational partner almost. And I think we've seen some examples of that today where people are saying that's what they've been doing. Skill, understanding AI behavior creates better, more understanding of AI behavior, but better outcomes. Basically, what's happening is we understand how it behaves. A certain LLM may behave in a certain way. We're seeing the differences between open source. I mean, you will have experienced perhaps open source, Quen AI, DeepSeek, those types. We're seeing a lot of the reasoning, and often it's because that's the bit where we're seeing, oh, that's the reasoning behind it. That's kind of how it's thinking through the process. And so we get to kind of understand, but what we want, yeah, did you have a question? Yeah, if you've got any, please, yeah, do. Yeah, I'm happy to sort of the science. So the structured approach yields consistent results. So once we start thinking about having more of a structured approach, we want to have kind of results that we know that actually by having a certain framework or having a system that works for us, and there are various prompts. In fact, a lot of the tools now have the kind of their prompts available. They may not be suitable, but that's where we start crafting our own unique prompts. And I'll give you a couple of examples why we want to do that, because I always use the analogy of cooking. We're not just going to have a kind of a Michelin star kind of dish if we're not going through all the steps and the ingredients that go through it. And the tools actually are so kind of well equipped. Some of the tools now that help us with that process, it makes it easy almost to sort of give us some of those instructions, if you like, and then layering prompts. You'll hear some of these terms perhaps already, the ones I'm going to capture. So yeah, it is an art of creative. As we go into this, it's not about the kind of knowledge per se. It's more about kind of creatively thinking through and thinking of the AI tool as your collaborator. And I think once we start involving our models to kind of work with us, we can kind of interchangeably create something that's very unique. So it's become a critical business imperative, right? Anyone that's in business at the moment and not using AI, I'm hearing a lot of people. I've had about 3 messages this week, people saying just not of interest to them. There's a huge London event, AI event happening at the moment in London. You may have heard of it. And I just thinking about all those people that are there kind of in this space, and we're here together. And those people who are in business who are really missing the opportunity, because it's like when people had cell phones, like, they just didn't want to let go of, and they're just like that. I mean, some people still have landlines, but they just didn't want to get rid of like or have a mobile phone. I don't know what those guys are doing now, or girls, but anyway, it is about kind of being ready in this space. So and it's become an imperative. It's become definite imperative in business. So it will enhance productivity, automate kind of routine tasks. The more we kind of understand how these prompts, how we're kind of crafting these, innovation from kind of, it's no longer about kind of that knowledge, because that knowledge can be captured as, if we, Google, or we use Bart, whatever tool, or Gemini, or whatever tool we're using, we can capture a lot of that information these days, just kind of at the touch of knowledge. But it's our expertise, as my kind of like mentors talks about knowledge entrepreneurs. He says, these entrepreneurs, the ones that, because we bring so much knowledge into this space, we're the ones that are going to be able to utilize it and kind of understand, are they giving us the thing that they're saying, and not going by first results. So innovation, so sort of reliability, ensuring that we get sort of these outputs and value. Transform AI from ornament to an operational tool. So not something that just sits on the shelf, but we're actually utilizing it. It's not longer a nicety, no longer like, oh, it's great to have that AI tool. It's a core business, and we will drive tangible results. And we're going to see much more of that. What I'm going to start introducing as time evolves, perhaps even kind of early autumn, is more of automation. So maybe even going into that, when more of us are kind of getting ready and sort of saying, look, how do I automate? I'm ready to kind of automate this process. Where do I take it now? So looking at kind of the autonomy, or the anatomy, beg your pardon, of successful prompting. If we think about examples, and some of you may already have done that, where you've given it an example. So perhaps in Helen's case, where you've given it an example of desired output, you've said, okay, this is kind of like my example. Giving it constraints is kind of key. Like if we don't, like we've done this in creating AI, where we created GPTs, and said, if we don't have those constraints, or we don't kind of set those rules or parameters, then it will just kind of, will go into this billing kind of, it's knowledge based, and it'll pull things out. We've still got to steer it in the direction we want it in, right? So it could be tone, cadence, rhythm, that type of thing. So when we're thinking about writing, because in LLM actually it's a large language model, so that's kind of what we're discussing here. Other kind of automation, what I've previously talked about, kind of, that's kind of what we're thinking about here when we're talking about LLMs, obviously in this specific context. But actually, when we're thinking of like our outputs in LLMs, or whether it's the large language model, the generative AI is images, right? Music, and voices as well, right? So all that, as long as we know, um, and context. So give it the necessary background information, and go, what is this? What specifically is it that you want from it? What I really love about working with these LLMs, it's allowed me to kind of really hone in and kind of really specify what it is I want. Sometimes I'm making assumptions the model's going to understand, but it's not going to understand. I'm like, why do you understand? Surely you did understand, right? Sure, we've all had those conversations where we're kind of conversing with a model where it's like, so what it's being specific, giving a persona, right? Who the AI should embody. 1 minute, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy, I'm busy. Okay. And a professional prompt is so thinking of a structured brief, not random question. Think of it, as I've mentioned as well, it's a creative brief for your AI partner or your kind of intern. I've used that as well. So I'm going to go on to some of the techniques. Does anyone have any questions before I go on to some techniques? Have I missed anything? Don't always see these questions. Anyone, you feel free to move. I'll check the questions afterwards. So advanced techniques, some of these, again, you may even, as the models are kind of maturing and getting to a level where they are, give you kind of some of these anyway, chain of thought. This kind of advanced techniques, chain of thought, think step by step. So we're seeing some of the reasoning happening already, but what we want to do is force kind of deeper reasoning. We want to force deeper reasoning and improve its logic. Because if we don't do that, what we're ending up having is just kind of surface level responses, and that isn't going to be good enough, right? So we want to kind of have deeper kind of reasoning, and so it improves the logic sequence. And I'll show you an example of something that I found to be really helpful in kind of some of my learning that I've been part of. Self-refinement, right? Ask AI to critique your own responses for clarity and then rewrite them, right? So you may ask it actually to critique your response. You can ask it, how would you go about it? And then, maybe ask, because having that critical partner for me has been the most powerful thing. And I think most of us here will have already kind of asked it to kind of, reason or give it, not taking the first response and really questioning what it's doing. Generate knowledge. First list key facts, then use those facts to create content. I love this approach because it's like, use what you've got, now create content based on the facts that have been presented, given, or, if you've used Perplexity or you've done kind of some research, then you're using that to create content, video content, which Helen talked about. Perhaps it might be, so whatever the content may be, might be a blog or what writing that you're doing. Multiple perspectives. Request the AI approaches a problem from different viewpoints. I really like this approach because what's happening is that the model starts to understand our own behavior. And I think that's kind of where things are shifting in a way, because it's starting to understand. And what I'll do is I may even share a prompt that you can try on your own device, which will probably give you the way you're showing up in this world. And through your chat conversations, it's like it's understanding your behavior and your, kind of how you're seeing the world. But what we want to see is different perspectives. That's where I feel the power is in these kind of techniques that we'll more and more kind of see once we start doing this. So becoming kind of a paradigm shift, definitely from a conversation, just from a simple back and forth chat with inconsistent results. Because if it's that kind of, conversation, it's not really hearing you, not getting the outputs you want, and it's like, well, those simple conversations with most people can do that. Anyone I've seen sort of really young, just everybody can do that. And then you've got the template user using structured prompts which are kind of repeatable but can be a bit rigid. Then what we've got the system builder. What we want to be able to do is create usable, reusable, adaptive process prompts. The goal is to reach a level where you're embedding your strategic logic into the AI. You're building it as a cognitive partner. And I'm going to show you a couple of examples as we go through this as well. So, and I'll kind of highlight one of the challenges in a moment, but I'm just going to see if anyone's got any questions as I'm just going through some of those points there. Just seeing what Helen said. Oh, Helen used ChatGPT is awful at generating a range. Okay. Cox at least and prompt was okay. Did you not? You didn't mean that, did you? Okay, I was like, okay. It does come out with some language that we may not. That's okay. It's like I didn't read that. Hopefully I didn't read that out. It's okay. But we do get a bit of nonsense coming out. It's like any questions before I move on to the next kind of point? As you're digesting some of that.
Yeah, so mine's probably a little aimed at me, but I was thinking of whilst we have these structured prompts, kind of you have the different flavors. You introduced me to tasks a while back, so I've been playing with this at quite some length, and I have to say I find the structure of the task sometimes a bit of a challenge. So just if you have any pointers or kind of just learnings that you've come across that would be helpful.
Yeah, and when you say task, could you say a little bit more kind of, is it that are giving it a task to do? I've got something that I'm going to share with you in a moment.
Yeah, so in a nutshell, what I've done is I've got it to actually do some market research to find prospects, as an example, okay? So I've given it some criteria, so some baseline stuff, add a little bit on top, and then said, actually remember, the last lot that you gave me, exclude them from this, da, da, da. So I have some exclusions in it, and then give it to me on a Monday, at 3 o'clock or whatever it is. And that's actually going relatively okay. But what it's doing is actually making up some stuff, and I don't quite know how to deal with that. So,
Okay,
but
so
that's very specific to me, so I'll put my hand up.
okay. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give you something today that will Beth was saying, should we do a live example? Yeah, we can definitely do that. So what we can do is let me give you an example that I feel that would be really helpful. So, where we were talking about going away from just giving it commands, and you could give it kind of, where you got personas and you kind of break it down. Well, I want us to take it a little bit step further and do something here, and we'll play around with it. Well, we can try it on our own device in a moment, but I'm going to go through some steps and then we can kind of think how that might apply in the model. So let me go through, I'm going to introduce something called, so you may or may not have heard of this, it's something called infinitive prompts. And it might be new. So I'm going to go through this and I'm going to go through the step-by-step process, okay? And we can test this out live. If I don't, then depending on your time and also where we are with it, so I'm going to go through what this is and where this came from. Okay, so this is and it's not in the slides, but what I'm going to do is I can also share. In fact, what I'll do is I'll share it comes from this gentleman called Michael Simmons. And it was introduced, and this is the document that I'll share with you, because I always find if you're doing something, you want to see how it works. Let me just share it with you, and this is kind of my document that you can have a look at. But and I'll walk through it with you now, okay? Because then you start seeing kind of and I can put this into the GPT or whatever. If you want to try a different model, we can try that. Um, so infinitive prompting, this is something that, and if you look up Michael Simmons, a name came about through my training with Lou Dallo, who is one of my mentors, and he introduced this concept. And when he introduced this concept to me, and I was thinking, well, how am I? What does this mean? And so I started really unpicking this. And I want to use this analogy of like, imagine, so infinitive prompting, right? So what does that mean? I was like, well, does this just carry on? Like, what does this mean? Right? We're talking about simple commands. Like, okay. So the way I see prompting, the way I'm starting to view prompting more and more is I'm going to use the analogy of customizing a doghouse, right? Okay, so I know Tom has a dog, right? So maybe he has a doghouse. I don't know, right? So we want to go to if you go to a regular helper and say, build me a doghouse, right? You might get a doghouse, but it probably won't be what you envisaged it to be, right? It's going to be perhaps the wrong size, it's going to be the wrong color, it's just going to have the wrong materials, etc., right? So what we want to be thinking about, and this analogy applies to a lot of the way if we start thinking about how prompting works. Infinitive prompting is like hiring a professional construction team. Instead of like having the thing to say, just go and build it. What sort of Simon and Michael Simons has done, he said, well, do it like this, and this applies to any kind of business approach too. Step one, the planner, the strategist, right? First, you talk to the planner. This AI's only job is to understand exactly what you want. It's like an architect who sits down with you. So, like we were talking about the collaborator, the person that sits with you. You are, oh, okay, so I want a doghouse. Okay. So the planner, the AI okay, great. Let's figure this out. How big is your dog? What dog is it? Should it match the style of your house? Does it need to be insulated for winter, etc., etc.? What, your budget requirements. And so what it starts doing is really unpicking kind of what that would look like. And then AI asks the question until it's perfect, right? So it needs to ask as many questions until it knows it's got a detailed blueprint. The blueprint lists everything needed, dimensions, step to build, and final look, feel, right? Step two, the foreman, the prompt architect. So you don't like, so you don't give the blueprint directly to the workers. You don't say, go and do this. You give it to the person who's kind of leading the foreman, right? He's the expert and writing sort of crystal clear step by step kind of instructions. It takes the blueprint from the planner and breaks it down into simpler, what we call foolproof tasks for the construction crew. So what we're doing here is we're going through these layers, if you like, these steps. For example, it won't just say build the walls. It will write a series of instructions like task, cut the main wall panels from plywood sheet, dimensions exactly 24 by 30. And then it'll say get the wood screws, assemble the four cut panels into a box shape, task, paint the assembled box into the barn red outdoor paint, etc. Each step is so specific that it's impossible for it to misunderstand the requirements. Then step three, like I said, we can put this through. Finally, the foreman hands these super specific. Now remember, it's super specific. It has to know exactly what's needed, instructions to the worker. This AI is the doer, the kind of person that does it. It doesn't think or improvise. It just reads one instruction at a time and does it perfectly. It will cut the wood, assemble the box, and paint it, following the foreman's instructions to the letter. That's key, right? So they're not derailing, they're not going anywhere else. They're kind of taking this. By the end, all the small, perfect executed tasks add up to the exact doghouse you imagined in step one. That was what you envisaged. So what does this tell us? It's simple, just better quality by breaking a big kind of vague request. So what we're doing is rather than having this kind of real, and often that's what tends to happen, kind of being in a space, being a coach myself, it's often people just have very vague ideas, but more specific, as we talked about. building, kind of looking at what the outcome would be, and then really kind of what you said, what we call reverse engineering, and then having a real clear path and tiny steps, momental steps, if you like, to avoid any mishaps. So we get a better final product. There's less confusion. The AI is never guessing, because what we want it to do is we want it to follow these steps. Otherwise, where what we're hearing is it's making things up, right? It's hallucinating, or it's kind of giving us the output we didn't want, because I always say what's happening is it's what we put in is what we get out. So more control. If the final doghouse has a crooked wall, or it's not, it doesn't exactly know which step, the wall, the wall assembly instructions, you can fix just that bit part easily. So it means that if that's the bit that's not actually, it's not adhering to, you can go back and then make those adjustments when you're fine tuning or going back to it. So this will help, kind of a smart way to manage AI, instead of giving one AI a very complex task and then asking it to unpick. You're kind of going through these certain layers. And that in itself is what infinitive, for example, prompting is. And if we can start thinking in that way, it will start getting us to think, and that's what requires a little bit of, and our knowledge is the bit where we're bringing in our own expertise, because we know those pieces, or we might know different people to call on. Does that kind of help understanding kind of that approach? Okay, yeah, David's had to go. Does that kind of make sense? Beth, did you have a question? And I can.
I think my question is really more as you're teeing this up, like it's really helpful when you actually show the script, I want a doghouse, and what AI might say back, right? But are you actually prompting it to say, we're going to do this in 3 steps, and here are 3 roles you're going to play. Let's go. Step 1, planner. Like, are you prompting it for that in advance?
What we're doing is we're giving it each layer one at a time, and then yeah, I would go one piece at a time
But you
before.
but you would designate what the role is that AI is supposed to play.
You could ask it if we're not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
you could ask it. If I wasn't, I didn't really know it would be a foreman. I would just say who's the guy that makes the doghouse? I don't know. Like, who is he? Like, is he like, I'm not even sure what I'd call him, right? So I might ask him, okay, your role is to do that. What is your role? So we can actually ask if we're not even clear on the actual role. But that's a really good question. Yeah, I use that analogy really of a doghouse, because we can all start thinking about something like that, or a dish that we want. We can kind of envisage that, because often when we're going into these tools, we want it to give us some answers, but we're very vague ourselves. And so because we're vague, we get the outputs that are not aligned with what we're thinking, but we didn't really know what we were thinking about initially. Does that make sense? So it becomes a little bit of a cycle of like, oh, would I want that? No, I didn't. Why is it telling me this? We're going backwards and forwards. I don't know. Like, maybe it's just my crazy way of thinking, but it tends to happen. So that was one, and that's the one technique. If you want to follow Michael Simmons, his approach. Yeah, sorry, Tom. Yeah, and I'll show you like a couple of examples. Tom, you had a question. Good to see you, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm pulling over in just a second here. I'm behind the wheel. But yeah, no, I saw an interesting interview earlier today. You mentioned the word hallucination, and on CNN, happened to interview a screenwriter. I guess he had a movie out and didn't see this one called Contagion. At the part of the pandemic, nervous and all that kind of thing. And so they said, well, I think we should make a sequel TV series or something. And he said his director or boss, producer, whatever the case may be, why don't we talk to AI? And he said that some of the came up with was a hallucination, and so he said,
I'm losing you, Tom. Is everybody?
I mean, I've
Yeah. Oh, we've lost Tom. Okay. I think what I got a little bit of that was the hallucination part where that was coming up. I think if we can use a system. Sorry, Tom, it looks like we lost you there.
You hear me now?
Yes, yes, can hear you.
Hello?
Yes, can hear you.
I'd try to make this so prolonged or whatever, but so at any rate, in my, I've used AI a lot, most GPT, but some other platforms also, and in my experience, it does kind of absorb my personality, my likes and dislikes, et cetera, who I am, and et cetera. So that I've always thought it's a combination of that, like knowledge of the verse, but we're doing creative suggestion that didn't work. Uh, saying from if you're
We're really Tom, we're really losing you. Can't really hear you. So now we've lost him completely. Yeah, I couldn't, I followed some of that, not completely to the teeth, to the letter. Like followed some of it. Like, but I got that there's a, that whole hallucination part angle. Is that what you got as well? Right. But yeah, one thing I really want us to be mindful of is the other strategy that I want us to start thinking more about is um, asking the AI to become our collaborator rather than asking, like start working with it. And as I'm thinking more about this and working on this, that's kind of where we want to take it. We want the kind of AI tool to be our partner as opposed to kind of like because we should never be stuck in this space. And I think that hallucination part, Tom, we couldn't hear you.
Yeah, sorry. I know how annoying that can be, and I didn't mean it to be such a long-winded comment/question, but I just thought it was an interesting idea. If you're doing something creative and you might want to be open to, suggestions you'd never thought of, which is a good thing. But then if it's a hallucination about things that don't really exist, that's not really necessarily very helpful. So that's I don't even know. That's kind of a vague comment/question, but it just came to my mind. I hope you don't mind me sharing it.
Yeah, it's a really good, yeah. So there's that tug, isn't there? Because we want it to be open. We want it to be open to ideas, but then not to make up or fabricate information. There's always a danger of that. And this is where I've always said about using tools that we can, make sure the information we've got actually is the information we have at hand. So, I always go on about triangulation, check that the information is actually the information, like check the current source, go back to the source and find out if that information is actually, what we're kind of hearing. But yeah, different perspectives definitely. That's why I love having these sessions that we get different perspectives, what's happening. You can also then say, how am I showing up, like from my conversations too? I'm just going to read the chat and then I'll show you a couple of examples. I think, Beth, you wanted a doghouse, a person who creates plans for doghouses. Ask me all the questions. Yeah, gather the knowledge you need to plan the perfect doghouse for my needs, something like that. Yeah, that you could do. Absolutely, you could do that. And then you could give it those layer instructions. That format, that template is really helpful. Say if you're creating writing as well. So within those 3 steps, you can always go back and make those amendments, having those 3 steps in that place. Ivan, yeah.
Sorry. I've actually used this inadvertently in helping a friend with exiting a board here in the UK. And we had some issues around governance and a couple of other things. And what we found was that building on kind of you would have to separate, because what I was doing initially was actually saying you are a blah 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 expert, right? And those people don't really exist. You have an expert in governance, you have an expert in HR law, you have an expert solicitor for having problems, and you have somebody who develops packages. So what I ended up doing was actually, rather than doing this generic URA, whatever, I chopped it up and made the person a chunk, asked some questions, next stage, ask some questions. And I have to say, there's a huge difference between the two approaches.
Absolutely, because those are the things where we get the deeper responses because it goes through the reasoning. The models are getting better at that already, so we're getting to see more of that as we're prompting and we're kind of training the model in a way that we're seeing these layers. There's a lot more. So what I'd advocate. So Andrew said, "I had a great session. I need to drop off. Thanks and invite Tom. Nice to meet everyone. Yeah, good to see Tom. I'm not sure it's yeah. So when we go through this, we want to go through one of the things. Do you remember what we did with the writing, Ivan, where we went through that writing example? In that writing framework. Now, what I did do is I think I might actually have it in I'll see if I went through this. So, as you know, I love creating GPTs, right? So, I think I used it as one of my writing guides, my super copywriter, possibly. What they do is I'm able to then create prompts, but then I can get the prompts to work in a way that kind of it's using, if you like, the dynamic prompt, although I only started actually applying dynamic prompts, so I can't say they were dynamic at that stage, but definitely things that I felt that could help me with my writing. What I tended to do was I created things like, let me see if I've got the pocketbook. So it's something that I'm doing with another lady creating pocketbooks. Actually, it's a new initiative, right? So what I ended up doing is if I go in, I show, because I know Beth wanted example. Beth, I can also share sort of a little bit more with you in a little video. But what I tend to do, I often really go through the prompting. I layer these prompting on, and then I can add this into my instructions, if you like, right? So I make it really clear what their role is. But say if I didn't even know what their role was, so even getting to a level where I was adding my prompt to this, I needed to go through those iterations and steps before I could even do that. So these are kind of when you're configuring. So the prompts could be used, your prompts that you're using in a way that you're using on different models, but you may even create them in a way that you upload in them. And then you create your guide, if you like, and upload that guide and these guides could actually have your prompts. So you could actually create a GPT with your prompts that you're using. So you're not having to then restart every time. Now, I wanted this specifically to help people in pocket writing, planning coach guide, to help them clarify their goals and get their project, started. And it's a bit of an initiative, but it needed a bit of iteration there. And I know that once we're looking at creating or we're testing these out, you are there, Beth. So I then would keep those. They are things that I might consider when I'm adding that. But before I even get to that stage, I feel, is it tested? I need to test it a few times, then I would upload it. You can either put it in a doc, in a template that you use, or you can create a GPT that you can evoke. If you've got the paid version, you can evoke that and use that. So that takes it to a level where you're not having to always go back, but you've done the initial work. So something that works, like Helen's been using, and then you can then apply that prompt in in that scenario, if you like. Um, because I mean, I will do a demo. If it would be helpful, we can do some demos next time. I could do another session where we just do demos, go under the hood, look at kind of live examples of what I'm actually looking at now, where the LLM model. So depending on which one you're using. So I can go with everyone and say which model, because I do have a preferred one. I use ChatGPT most. I use three or four, but I tend to go there just because I've created the GPTs. But I know a lot of people have projects and use Claude, the one, depending on which one. But I'm more than happy to do that in 2 weeks' time, where we say, okay, we're going to do from prompting theory to practice. So we'll call it that, and then we can go in and do that. And you can test some prompts out yourselves and maybe even share them. And I'm happy to kind of do that in 2 weeks' time if that would be helpful. And we can go in. Would that be of use? So what are some of the things you're using? We started with what you're using your prompts for, but you got some good. Let me see if there's anything I've missed in the chat. And Zaha has a lucky she's okay. Need a dog. Okay, I'm just reading Tom's comment on the doghouse analogy there. So what are some of the things that you're findings working or not working? So I'm going to give you something that one of my and I'm going to encourage you to try this one out. Um, okay, and I'm going to copy this one out, and this is something that we will work on next time because I'm really kind of crafting this area. Okay, so it is going to be, oops, it's a little bit too long. Okay, okay, so we can do a little bit of this next time. So my one of my mentors, we've been talking a little bit about how we take it from very simple prompting to take it through the developmental trajectory or his philosophy, right? I call it. And he's got from conversational prompts, okay, the ones we've been having, or when we're creating, back and forth, where it takes a lot of time we want to look at, but doesn't have the reliability, scalability. I've just put it in the chat. Then we've got the level 3 prompts, which is about structured input frameworks, where he uses something called prompts, which is like the purpose, or you've got the role, you've got the outputs, and then he says the task, um, and then he's got what's this systems, I believe. I'll check what the acronym is that he uses. And then we want something that's repeatable. But then he takes it a layer further, which this is the bit where I found really interesting, is we want a process prompt. So rather than just having a prompt that we have, go through to a process prompt that actually becomes, and I put his methodology here, and I'm going to share it, that it is like, it's a bit like the AA, the agents, we're working more towards that capability, that we train it not only kind of the outputs, the frameworks, but it becomes our thinking partner. It becomes the way we show up. And so it becomes the partner where we're looking at process. Each process is the bit that we're looking at. So it becomes our thinking partner, basically. And if we can move more in that direction of the way we're prompting, we'll be taking it we'll be going from just simple outputs to having frameworks to having a thinking partner. And that's where we'll be able to go next time when we start thinking about in 2 weeks' time, how can we get it to become our thinking partner? And what I'll do is I'll share something with you, which I'd like all of you to just test out in your conversation, depending on which tool you're using, to see if it's picking up your, perhaps your coaching philosophy, your, entrepreneurial journey for some of us, your media ethos. Because I'll give you something you can pop in there. It will give you based on your chats, it will find kind of the style, the way you're showing up in this world. So we may still be inadvertently having some biases because we're always seeing things from our own lens. That's why having a thinking partner who can go through some of this and challenge us is going to be the key. So some things to think about there. And I've got a few sources that I'll mention as well that I refer to, which if you want to kind of take it to want to read more about it or kind of, have a look a little bit more. Based on what we covered today, how will you be using the prompting for yourselves? Maybe some shares, just kind of where there was a lot I talked about. Tom, I can see you're back at your desk now. Liza, how about yourself?
Yeah, I'm absorbing quite a lot, and I've actually been practicing and playing with developing prompts for the last week and a half. So thank you for today. um, Thank you for today, because you've even taken me back a few months from using the LM in preparing the podcast that I had done. I had experienced that, if you give it too much information, but then you want to go back and change it, it's difficult to go. So I really enjoyed understanding the infinitive prompting and the layering and understanding. Now, as I reflect, I think, oh, yeah, I could have benefited a little bit more from that. Recently, this past week, I've been using it, the prompting around, you are an experienced market researcher looking to do da, 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 da. And I've been trying new ways of doing the prompting and getting new information. I think in the last 2 weeks I've hit a bit of a wall, because if you remember, I was very excited. I was developing this loving relationship and
Yeah.
feeling really smart, and um yeah, I was just feeling very complimented by my ChatGPT responses to my questions that I was asking.
Right.
And I started to notice then that's when I started to notice little things like, oh, wait a minute, but I've asked it not to include this, and it didn't include it this time, but the next two times it did include it, so it's forgotten, and then there was a watering down, and then I found myself getting really frustrated, like, oh, I've got to be a babysitter now. I've got to go
Right.
back and proofread. So I realized that I'm in the next phase. In my relationship with my ChatGPT friend, and yeah, just kind of playing now with the layering and how do I use that. So I mean, because at the moment I'm using it for myself, but I'm also using it in support of Paul, working with him for his online gym equipment um product. So for him, I've been using it much more, trying to profile the audience that we're targeting, looking at how do we build a social media strategy, but also creating images. Well, not just creating images, actually uploading images and adjusting the images to make them more customized for his brand. So I've been doing that, and then I've been using it a little bit on my coaching side in developing a survey, so doing some market research. So I am using it very different, and I've been using Perplexity, ChatGPT. Oh, I can't remember what the other one was that I was doing on videos, but yeah, it's two. There's two other ones that I've been using, but I can't remember the names of them. And I've been using Perplexity and ChatGPT together,
Mhm.
and then ChatGPT doing 4.0 and 4.5, and I've been using the 4.0 to help me write the prompt to give it to 4.5, but then I've put it into Perplexity. So I feel like I'm doing a lot of trial and error at the moment, and a lot of learning.
Beautiful. And you've got some that are working. I would sort of start looking at keeping those, because if we keep going back, the frustrations keep coming, when you're going backwards and forwards, that's where that loss of time is. It might be videos. I don't know. Is it Hey Jen you're using? Is it
I
Hey
haven't
Jen?
actually started the videos yet.
Okay.
So what I've been doing is actually, so for the videos and for the imagery, what I've actually been doing is using it more as a collaborator to help me think about what do I need to consider when I prepare this. Um, and then considering the market that we are communicating to. So I haven't actually started that. But I'm at the point, Bally, where I might actually be reaching out to you privately and say, could you help me navigate this one a little bit better?
Beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Beth. And yeah, so fantastic. Yeah, all the best. You did say you need to leave, and we've gone over a minute. So thank you, Beth. I'll share a couple of things and then test that out where it says synergistically try this and put it into your device and see what's coming up based on my chats, what it's revealing about me. Sort of like we can try a few testers like that. I hope you found it helpful. There's a lot of information today, I understand, and it is going to be, but hopefully the big takeaway is we don't have to keep going back to the same thing and then unpacking each time. It's like creating, it's like going back to like foundation, get the foundation right, get that kind of to a level where we feel comfortable enough to start thinking, I'm happy with kind of where it is, and then automating, because that would be the next thing once you've, looked at kind of getting it to a level where it becomes your thinking partner. So having it, Liza, for you to have it as a thinking partner, using kind of that approach would be the way to kind of just having something really remarkable that we can utilize. Helen, I hope you found it helpful. It was great having you on. And I will share also kind of, the recording from today. And yeah, and like I said, there are different approaches, there are different frameworks, thinking about purpose, always thinking about what is it we want to do, what is the context, giving those, because those are the things I can share these frameworks. Looking at the persona is also really key. Because if we can start looking at kind of the persona, sometimes we don't know who that persona is, and kind of the outcome, what is it that we want from this tool, to whatever that might be. So if it's creating a blog or creating, with that particular guide, I had to go backwards and forwards a little bit, so to get it to a level where I needed to test it to get it to a prompt. We can have like really kind of dynamic prompts that actually do the layering, but it almost seems like a in a format like a JSON format, that it does that's where the science comes in, and we don't have to learn all that. Actually, the AI tool can support us in having a prompt that can become our what I call is now like a superpower that kind of just produces it because it knows we've tested it and we've ran it through. And it is a bit of iteration for sure, but once you have that, let it run for a bit and then you can evolve and change it. Hope you found it helpful, Helen. Really good to see you on.
I did. Thank you so much. Very, very helpful. Yeah.
I'm excited to see where you go with it, having kind of your videos, because I know you're using it in a.
Well, I haven't used it that way for a while, but it's something that I need to get back into and start using that prompt again and improving on it.
Beautiful, yeah, and you can refine it and see,
Yeah.
and test it out as well, because that's what it is. Because often we think this is what it can do because we want to kind of prod it a little bit. That's why I don't like taking these things surface level. I want to like really challenge its capabilities. And yeah, thank you. Great seeing you. And I know, Liza, I've gone over. So yeah, thank you, Ivan. It's really good to see you. I might, yeah, see you tomorrow, Ivan, for our breakfast meeting. Speak to you later. Okay, all the best.
Yes,
And the
we'll
next
see you in the
bi
morning. Take care.
yeah, nice bi-week. Next bi-weekly is 2 weeks time. So yeah, it would be great to see you on. Like I
Thank
said,
you.
look at those. Okay, bye for now.
Really helpful. Ciao,
Yeah.
ciao.
Ciao, ciao, ciao.